welcome to Historical Trash Box, where we talk about history in the trashiest way. My name is Dedrick, and I'm going to be alone today. But we're going to pick up on the Cold War that we finished last weekend. Hopefully you guys watched that. If you didn't, go watch that right now. So, we're just going to pick up right now. So, and thank you for that comment recommending that I work on my tone. Hopefully this is a bit better. It's a bit more high-pitched, and I don't sound absolutely depressed. So, there's that. So, after World War II, the Soviet Union had control over what would happen to the Eastern Europe. And what Eastern Europe is basically countries like Poland and Czechoslovakia. So, yeah. They ended up making all the Eastern Europe countries Soviet satellite states, meaning they had total political control over them. After seeing what happened to Europe, Harry S. Truman, the President of the United States at the time, released the Truman Doctrine, which basically said the USA will try everything in their power to stop the spread of communism across the world. Many historians say this was the start of the Cold War, which I agree with them because, well, why wouldn't it be the start of the Cold War? I mean, so many things happened, so it kind of has to be named as it. So near the start of the Cold War, there was a lot more physical contact than spying, but don't get me wrong, there was indeed a lot of spying. An example of physical contact was the German airlift. The German airlift was an operation set up by the newly formed NATO, or North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was set up in 1949. The reason why they did this was because of the Marshall Plan, which was meant to give Europe about $2 billion for financial recovery after World War II, but the Soviet Union wasn't having any of it. Therefore, the Soviet Union prevented all of her satellite states, including East Germany, to not accept the money. But the USA wasn't having it either. So they still gave the money to East Germany and parts of Poland. This made the tension grow even more. That same year, the USSR gained nuclear power because during World War II they had been spying on the USA and their nuclear testing. The world now knew if a war were to break out between the two, it would be mutual assured destruction, or MAD for the doctrine. In about 1950, the USA checked in on their ally China and found out that the civil war that had been on hold in World War II hadn't ended. Now, China was the People's Republic of China, and Korea gained its independence. Korea's independence did not last and would split on the 30th parallel with two very different beliefs. I've tried saying that word this whole time, but I can't. I literally can't. Different beliefs. In the north, we had a communist regime, which was led by, I don't remember who it was led by. Anyway, moving on to the south, which was an anti-communist regime or a democracy. And in the north, they were supported by the Soviets, and in the south, they were supported by the USA and NATO. The war would last until 2018, with only the real fighting coming in the 50s between 1950 and 1953. The change of power in both countries a weird transition there, but we're actually speaking of the USA and the USSR. We're actually speaking of the USA and the USSR now, so my bad. Anyway, there was a change of power between both countries, and the United States chose their new president, named Dwight D. Eisenhower. In my opinion, a pretty good president, but not the greatest, obviously. While the USSR's leader, Joseph Stalin, died due to a brain hemorrhage, which could have been avoided if he did not lock up all of his best doctors, or kill them. He did both. The new leader of the USSR would be Nikita Khrushchev, and he, sorry, need a quick drink real quick, my bad. And okay, over the next 3 years, he would not be focusing on what was the conflict with the United States at the time, but would be focusing on tearing down any signs of Stalin, like taking down all of the statues and renaming Stalingrad to Volgograd. So, yeah, it is a bit. He wanted to get rid of any sign of him because he thought that regime by Stalin was a disgrace, but they really couldn't do anything until he died. After he was done with that, he would be letting quote-unquote freedom in the USSR, which really meant suppressing any sort of protests with guns and getting rid of anything that he doesn't like. Like certain pieces of art you couldn't make. Types of books you couldn't make. Types of music you couldn't make. And being a certain even being a certain ethnicity or race, you couldn't be. You would be kicked out or sent to Siberia. Sorry. It's a lot of talking. It's a long time. Alright, what should be... Oh, during this time, both countries upgraded to hydrogen bombs, which were at least 6 times stronger than the atom bomb. So, if you know the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, imagine that devastation 6 times. Yeah, that's kind of bad, don't you think? Also, Cuba at this time was having a civil war, and they were now a communist country led by Fidel Castro. So, while I'm getting our drink. Alright, so now we're entering the 1960s, and to begin the 1960s, we have to point out the newly elected president, John F. Kennedy, or JFK, how I will refer to him, who would have a short presidency. He would not go a full term, but would go through more trouble than any other president could have. An example of this trouble would be the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the Soviets had been storing nukes on Cuba, which could hit almost anywhere in the United States except for like Seattle, which wasn't really populated then. The way JFK responded to this dilemma is the failed Bay of Pigs invasion on Cuba, which made Fidel Castro livid. So he asked Khrushchev to ready the nukes. Okay. And the USA did the same. And over the next about 14 or so days, the world came the closest it had ever had to total annihilation. Thankfully, Khrushchev contacted Kennedy and said that if he removed the nukes from Turkey, he would remove the nukes from Cuba. And so JFK agreed. After all that, well, there's only one person that didn't really like this whole thing, and that was Fidel Castro, and he would fall from power, but he would stay in Cuba with what he did in that short time. He was the main leader. All right. After the Cuban Missile Crisis, both countries signed a deal banning nuclear testing in the atmosphere of Earth and in the water. That same year, the Berlin Wall was erected and would divide the halves of Germany until 1989. JFK gave his famous speech saying that democracy isn't perfect, but we have never had to build a wall to keep our people in or keep others out. Though he was a good president, he was assassinated on November 22nd. Having a script makes this go by a lot faster. But we still have a lot of this war to go. So we'll have to catch you next week. Right? Yeah, hopefully we can get somebody on with this, because doing this alone is no fun, right? We need somebody. So Rat King, Phoenix, Turt, Spudnik, or even Mayo. We can't. If you're hearing this, please, 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 the next one. I know we have a lot going in our lives and we can't get the timing right, but let's just try, okay? All right. I love you all. Have a good day.